Welcome to Truth and Company Boxing Podcast for another segment of 20 Random Questions. I'm your host, John the Truth Dioria, and today's guest is former boxer and trainer Joey Hernandez.
How you doing, guys?
How you doing, man? Appreciate you taking time to come on.
I'm well, man. Thank you for having me. Hi to
So,
the audience as well.
so let's just talk about something that the world saw last night, at least the boxing fans, real quick. They turned boxing upside down. Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia. There's a lot of people on the internet talking about they were going for Garcia. They picked Garcia. I don't know how much I believe that unless you're showing me a betting slip.
Right.
But that fight was insane. I mean, all the theatrics that he did over the last 3 months, I don't know if some of them were real or some of them were faked or some of them were staged for the fight. But at the end of the day, he got in the ring, and not only did he shock the crowd, he shocked Devin Haney.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, as far as the antics, I think some of us, we're using the internet in a different way, right? But some of these younger kids, younger generation, they understand what gets the eyeballs, right? And I think that Ryan is really in tune with his audience and how to get them engaged and how to get them to fight. And also, not to mention the fact that I think that a lot of this stuff threw off Haney in a sense of him thinking probably this kid's crazy, whatever. But he was crazy like a fox because he did his thing for sure. And, I think Devin Haney has a whole different perspective this morning of Ryan.
What I don't understand is it's not like, Garcia's hook was a secret by any means. So Absolutely. How Haney, like he said in the interview, he said he slept on it. He fell asleep in the ring. How can you fall asleep on the one shot that could possibly put you down? And not only did he fall asleep on it once, he fell asleep on it several times.
Yeah, multiple times. No, to say, I think his ego is bruised today. Obviously, his dad's as well. His dad did a lot of talking as well. But yeah, to say that, all of a sudden Ryan Garcia discovered that hook is ridiculous. He got caught, and Ryan did some, he has to give Ryan the credit for doing those setups because Ryan did set it up. And at the end of the day, he was stalking a puncher, which at times is dangerous, and that's what happened.
Ryan definitely got my respect last night. I couldn't believe that fight. I mean, knocking him down 3 times, almost 4. Nobody's talking about the time he knocked him across into the ropes and the ropes caught him. So that would have been 4 times.
No,
but
it was the fact that, the ref, I mean, it was almost saved him. To me, so
boxing definitely needed that upset, I think. And I don't know if anybody saw the fight before, but Arnold Barbosa did not win that fight. I mean, they gave him that fight. That was another fight that he should have lost, and everybody knows he's trying to move ahead in that division. And the guy that what was his name? McCombs outboxed him the entire fight, and then they gave the decision away. So
yeah, that was one of those setup fights for the next fight, and I think they were looking at how Barbosa, will sell it the next time. But there
you go. Barbosa and Haney can fight now.
There you go. You know what I mean?
Or Garcia and Barbosa.
Yeah, well, Garcia's going to be able to fry some big fish, and a lot of people are going to want to fight him, as you know, because he has the eyeballs, and they made some money last night.
Well, you know what? Isaac Cruz is sitting on a title, isn't he?
Yes, he is, and if anybody deserves to fight any of these guys, it's Isaac Cruz.
There you go, Isaac Cruz and Garcia for the title.
Yeah, why not? You heard it here.
Garcia deserves a world title shot. I mean, even though he lost the weight, because of the weight, he lost the one last night. But
he says 147, and we know right now that 147 is a tough cookie for him. Obviously with Bud up there, and I don't see him, being able to hang with those two guys, Ennis and Butter on a whole other level. They need to fight. That's a fight that needs to happen,
Yeah.
but I don't see Garcia there. But again, there's so many fights. Teofimo Lopez is out
Yeah.
there for him. Um, Tank at the end of the day is a fight that I know he's gonna want, right? He wants his get back at Tank. And it's gonna have to be at over 140. It's gonna have to be um, I think if it happens again, Ryan will dictate some more of the terms because this win for him was big and it helps. Like you said, it just turns everything upside down.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, let's get to the random 20 questions here in a second, but I want fans to understand what you've done in the sport of boxing. So you were an amateur fighter,
Yes,
but
sir.
then eventually you became, what would you call it? A fitness trainer?
I became a strength and conditioning coach. I
Okay.
worked with a lot of NBA players while I was in college in Atlanta, and I boxed at a gym there called Biggs Morrison Boxing Gym with Vernon Forrest, Robert Allen, Chris Johnson, Cedric Boswell. I mean, there were a lot of fight. Oh, Isra Gurga, uh, who Isra win now, right? But one of the first pioneer women fighters that fought big fights with Christy Martin. But there was just a lot of great fighters at that gym, and I was doing strength and conditioning for a lot of NBA players at a gym there called Peachtree Center Athletic Club. And I worked with a host of NBA players and eventually started working with a lot of professional fighters.
Okay. So, all right. So let's get to the random 20 questions. So, question one, how did you get involved in the sport of boxing?
My uncles grew up in New York City, so boxing, at that time, even more was a big sport. You had, a lot of big fighters, Camacho, Laporte. You had a lot of fighters in the city. Um, so my uncles would, randomly take me from housing project to housing project before I turned 9, and I would box the kids. And then eventually, when I was 9 years old, GNS Sporting Goods, the now defunct GNS Sporting Goods, that was in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, were my first sponsors. And I boxed in the amateur program there in New York.
So then why did you never decide to turn pro?
Well, I fought Golden Gloves in South Florida, fought Golden Gloves in the state of Georgia, and I was blessed with the opportunity to go to school, and I was making a substantial amount of money at the time when the option to to box professionally came across. I was working in the internet industry at the infancy of the internet industry, and the money was it was great money, and I wasn't getting hit. Having to hit any or wake up in that mode that you have to get up with every day as a fighter. You know what I'm saying? And still, I was able to feed that by still sparring with all the pros that I was able to spar with growing up. Roberto Duran, uh, working with Bones Adams, working with Glenn Johnson, working with all kinds of different fighters, Juan Arroyo, different fighters that were here in South Florida. I was still able to feed that, but I was working as a professional making too much money. And the amount of fights that I would have needed to have to be earning, 6 figures, it was a lot, especially at that time. So
Okay.
I opted to do the business side.
All right. Well, question two, seeing you actually just said you worked with a lot of different big names in the industry and things like that. So tell me what your boxing Mount Rushmore is, your top 4 guys.
Wow. Sugar Ray Robinson, to me, you got to always put Sugar Ray Robinson there. My Mount Rushmore, first and foremost. Um, you got to put, I think, for me, Jack Johnson, and I say it under the circumstances that he fought. No human being has ever fought under those types of circumstances, right? where everybody hates you and wants to kill you or see you die. So I mean, I put Jack Johnson there, Muhammad Ali, uh, Manny Pacquiao, and believe it or not, I think Finito Lopez deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore. Just for me,
Okay.
and give or take, I would have to put Duran there as well.
All right. Question 3. Do you have any hobbies that have nothing to do with boxing?
Yeah, absolutely. uh, Art, creating, branding. It's part of what the businesses that I have today. Um, and a lot of it comes from sports and as far as the aspirations to the art. But yeah, artwork, which really is total opposite runner from boxing.
Now you say artwork. Do you paint? Do you draw? What do you do?
A little bit of everything, but mainly drawing. Drawing and putting it into graphic design. You know what I mean? And animating those drawings as well.
Okay.
So
All right. Question 5. So when you did box, did you have any boxing superstitions?
you know, um, really, just I think that the thing, and a lot of fighters get is who's wrapping your hands. You know, like I had some trainers that just will wrap your hands so good that it felt like you wouldn't want anybody else to wrap your hands. So that was probably one of my only superstitions. You know.
All right. Question 6. Now you had just mentioned some names that you've sparred with and stuff. So talk to me about some of the bigger names that you've actually been in the ring with sparring.
Well, for me, always the glory was sparring Duran, right? Because of him being such an icon, and I was, young, um, and learning all the teachings that I got from sparring with Duran. Um, sparring with people like Glenn Johnson when you're young, it's no, Glenn's a killer. You know what I mean? So he's throwing a lot at you constantly, consistently. Freddie Pendleton as well. You can learn with Freddie. Freddie was a professional, fought a lot of fighters, fought a lot of great fighters. Um, Sparring in Puerto Rico with a lot of great fighters over there as well. It's just a different style, you know. Um, George La Sierva, Mexican fighter as well, because his dad trained me for some time in the amateurs, and that learning, getting that Mexican style, and so just man, there's so many fighters. Juan Arroyo, great fighter, hard life story, but consummate professional. Uh, was able to, fight for Camacho when Camacho was in his prime, and he was in the streets. Still was able to drag Camacho out 8 rounds. So a lot of fighters, man. Vinny Paz came through the gym, worked with Vinny. Um, so yeah, just a lot of great fighters, man. A lot of great memories and a lot of great teachings from each and every one of them. But as I would say is, sparring with Duran, where I think I learned the most. You know,
Okay. All right.
wasted
Oh,
wasted very little movement. You know,
all right. Question 7. Tell me something that you're very passionate about.
well, I'm I was very passionate and still am passionate about fighters getting their proper just due financially, right? And that they're able to, we see more fighters retire and actually have money, and you see them in the future. They've done well enough to be okay and not see them struggling as much. So that's why I got into early on as well into doing sponsorships for fighters, right? Finding companies to work with them and what have you, and getting them other passive income, if you may, right? That's a big passion of mine. It was a passion, it still is, and that's why I still work with some fighters to that capacity and try to work with them in getting sponsors.
All right, question 8. If you could have a conversation with one person from history, who would it be?
Wow. Always people say, a lot of people say Jesus or God and stuff like that, right? I probably want to have a conversation, and people probably find it random, but with President Truman, right? President Truman dropped the first atomic bombs, right? So I probably want to have a conversation with him because that changed everything. You know what I mean? And I want to know what was going through somebody's mind when they were able, to know that they were going to unleash that kind of thing and what was going through their head. So
that's an interesting answer. It is.
I want to know. It's one of them things, and yeah. So
all right. Question 9. If you had to spend 30 days in a jail cell, what comedian would you choose to have as your cellmate?
Wow. Okay. Probably. I wouldn't say Chappelle. Probably Chappelle, because Chappelle is quiet, but every now and then, he can just come with the jokes, right? And it's not like he has to set them up. It's almost in a conversational fashion that he does it. So dude will have you laughing pretty much all the time, if you're going to have to spend 30 days in the box. Chappelle.
Yeah. All right. Question 10. Why did you box?
Well, a passion of my uncles, and, being Puerto Rican heritage, you're either playing baseball or you're boxing, So at a really early age, the town where my family comes from in Puerto Rico is the town where the first Puerto Rican world champion is from. And that's Sixto Escobar, who was the first Puerto Rican world champion. And he was from a town called Barcelona, Puerto Rico. And going there as a kid, there was a boxing gym in the town, and I boxed there. And what you want to hear something random enough is that I used to box with a Mexican kid that lived in Puerto Rico. His family had moved to Puerto Rico, and Gilberto Garayuba, and he had the Mexican style from then. And so it all came from there. It's just a heritage thing, and having a bunch of uncles, and growing up in cities, you're gonna box, you're gonna fight. So it just became part of it. And then my mom was like, hey, it's okay, my uncle's like, at 9, let's take him to the gym. He's already been boxing around town. So I just went to the gym and loved it. Boxing's one of those things, man, that if it's in you, you're gonna, as soon as you taste it, it's like one of those amazing dishes. You're gonna love it, and you're not gonna want to get away from it. And even when you go and you spar that kid that's better than you, and he may get you that day, if it's in you, like I said, you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm going. I can't wait to go back and spar again or do whatever again. It's one of those things, boxing.
All right. Well, speaking of delicious dishes, question 11: what is the best dish you can cook?
Best dish I can cook. Wow, man, being strength and conditioning and living, a pretty clean and healthy lifestyle. All the stuff that I cook is, that I can cook personally. My wife is an amazing cook. She's Cuban. She's an amazing cook. But me, stuff's going to be boring. So, you might get some avocado toast, which is a delicacy, but a lot of egg whites, a lot of turkey bacon, a lot of, grilled chicken breasts, tuna, fish, and, we live in South Florida. We're blessed with, we have the ocean right there, so we eat a lot of fish here. And, I have a 1-year-old son, and so I'm trying to, we're already feeding him good, and having him eat good, because it's crazy how much junk is in the food we eat and our kids are eating.
Oh, I
So,
agree with you.
you know,
All right, question 12. Can you tell me an interesting story out of your boxing career as far as being involved in the sport of boxing?
interesting story. Okay. Well, like to say this, when we went to do the back tattoos, right? So, my partner Joe Lear and I, we, concepted up doing these back ads. This was back in 2001 when Bernard Hopkins fought Tito Trinidad. And subsequently, when Bones Adams fought Paulie Ayala. So we were working with a online casino called Golden Palace, right? So, he was who we were going to try to find. And obviously, Bernard is a guy who thinks for himself, we approached other fighters, right? And other fighters were always worried about, go talk to my manager, go talk to my promoter or whatever, right? So we'll talk to your manager because he's your manager. But we just thought that while going to the promoter was going to want the money. So interesting story is this, that, when we went to Bernard, Bernard was like, F Don King, I'm not worried about what Don King wants or what have you. And Bernard waging the money on himself to win when people were thinking that Trinidad was going to just, walk through him or whatever, because of how he walked through Joppy, the fight before in the tournament. And yeah, it's just was for me how interesting it was, and how many boxers I learned that day and that time period, how many boxers were not in control of they were not in control of their destiny. They put it in other people's hands. They didn't understand, how these things, they needed to be on top of these things, and these things were going to be affecting their money and the way they live, right? And yeah, man, Bernard was always like, I don't care. Fighters should get the money. And I'm sure now it's different. He's a promoter, right? So we'll see, how that's working now. I think that Bernard's still open like that. Like if you can go get sponsors, and you got sponsors, no one's gonna hate on that. You're not gonna get that from them,
Okay,
So,
question 13. If you could have a conversation with any animal, what animal would you want to talk to?
oh man, I would like to talk to. I'd want to talk to a lion. Want to talk to a lion because the one thing about the lion is he ain't the strongest, right? He ain't the fastest. He's not the biggest. But what makes the lion, and I would love to hear from their perspective, but all the people who study animals say is just the fact that they're not scared of shit. They're just not scared of anything, right? Obviously, an elephant will trample them, you know what I mean? Like, and a tiger, technically, a tiger will kill a lion, no problem. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but a tiger, big Bengal tiger, will kill a lion with no pets. Personally, much bigger, and yeah. So I want to talk to a lion. Because hey, yo, how did you just how can you so nut?
All
So yeah.
right. Question 14. What's your favorite sports team and why?
Favorite sports team and why? Wow. Well, I'm gonna say not just because I'm down here, but I love the Miami Heat, the basketball team, because they do a lot with a little. You know what I mean? They as a team, and the people who work within the team who select these players, they have an unbelievable eye for finding players that'll overachieve for cheap. You know what I mean? So they don't have superstars. Look, right now they're in the playoffs again, and their best players, I think he's hurt, and they're still playing. You know, all these other role players are playing big, and that's what it is. It's playing. It's a culture of doing whatever you have to do, playing hard defense, doing whatever you need to do for your team to win. And a lot of teams are not like that. You know that. A lot of these guys get into the money, and their perspective changes. And for a team organization to have the ability to find players everywhere through the draft, through free agency, through whatever, that fit the mold for the style is a lot. So I say the Heat.
Okay, question 15. If you were on death row, what would be your last meal?
Wow. Death row. Jeez. I'm going to go out light. I would have probably have a big yellowtail fillet, and nice baked potato, loaded baked potato, maybe some rice. Yeah, go out light.
All right, question 16. If the mayor of your city was willing to name something after you, what would you want named in your city after you?
Probably the biggest park. Yeah, man, big park. So people get out there and get off their ass, you know, right? And take their kids out, man. Look, everybody blames kids. Just go off the beaten path for this, because why I would want to park, right? Everybody likes blaming the kids. All they want to do is play video games. All the kids, all they want to do is be on social media. Message to parents: how the F did they get there? Stop blaming the kids, right? I go out to a restaurant, happens to you, happens to everybody listening here. See a kid with his family, kid starts whatever, they hand them what? An iPad. So he can stick his face into the iPad, and he's 3 years old. And then you wonder why they're running around and they can't get their face out the phone.
Yeah,
Grown-ups need to stop blaming kids for doing stuff that adults let the kids do. You run your house. I run my house. Right? My wife and I, we're not going to you can't let them do it. If you let them do it, then don't come back later and say that, they're take their ass to the park that they name after me, Hollywood.
All right, question 17. Who's the hardest puncher you ever faced in the amateurs or in sparring?
Whoa. Hardest puncher. Man, that he cracked. What is this kid's name from New York? Had huge forearm. I forget his name. Well, look, Duran punched hard, obviously, every now and then you'd catch an elbow. Which is how it was with him. It'll slip through the hook. Here comes the elbow. But I would say, Zab punched hard because it was fast, and sometimes you didn't see it till what I mean. It hit you. So, but the hardest person that ever hit me was definitely Glenn Johnson.
Okay. All right, question 18.
He's a light heavyweight at that. So, yeah, Glenn.
Question 18. If you could be a bird, what bird would you be?
Man, a hawk. A hawk.
Okay. All right. Question 19. Do you have any phobias?
Listen, I don't like spiders like anybody else. An arachnophobia, I think it's called. You know, particularly in Australia, they're the size of a cab. You know, yeah, spiders, I could do without them. Yeah.
All right. Question 20. If you
Yes.
died tomorrow, what would you want your fans, your friends, and your family to say about you?
He was okay. An intellectual roughneck. Yeah, that's it. You know, still can handle yourself, can handle myself, can handle taking care of my family, and but still with a firm intellect that I can go into a room and deal with anybody at any level. You know? So yeah, that's would be what I would want to be remembered, that I can wear different jackets.
All right. Well, listen, Joey, I appreciate you taking time to come on and do the 20 random questions. If you got anything to say to anybody out there, give any shout outs before we're done, go ahead.
Oh man, yeah. Shout out to my brother Bones Adams. You know, love Bones. Bones, my brother. Shout out to Zab, my man Zab. Zab's doing all kinds of stuff outside of boxing and entertainment. Big shout out to Zab. Big shout out to my big bro Bernard Hopkins. You know, always a pleasure being around him, working with him. And yeah, man, big shout out to all your fans out there watching. Thank you for having me. And I hope I see you guys around and we could talk boxing. Thanks, man.
All right. Hold on. And the truth has spoken.